Good morning, everyone. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. Hello. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. My name is Baron Ryan. I'm one of the community organizers, and the other one who's here today is Dustin Curzon. He's in the purple shirt in the back, the sweet purple V-neck that's struck today. We're really glad that you're here this morning. 1 Million Cups is an organization that started in the Kaufman Foundation in Kansas City a couple of years ago, and we're now in at least 34 cities across the country. The idea is that we want entrepreneurs and startups to be a fundamental part of the community that they're in. So every week, Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, we have 2 startups present on what they're doing, what their story is, and then it's our chance as a community to engage with them, to help them grow, and to really bolster our community all together by the growth of these startups. So what's going to happen, we have 2 presenters this morning. They each get 6 minutes to tell us their story, and then we get 20 minutes to interact with them and ask them questions and give them feedback to help them get even better in the future. So the first presenter that we have this morning is called Cozy. Cozy is a service that will allow you to pay what you want to have bugs on your website fixed, essentially. That is a layman's description because I know nothing about coding or programming or anything like that. But the man who's about to talk to you knows a whole lot. So let's give a hand for Luke Crouch and Cozy.
Okay, cool. So, my name is Luke, and I've been, you might have noticed I'm not a stylish marketing guy. I've been an open source coder for about 7.5 years, and involved in a lot of coding communities, so really the code is where I live, and that I'm going to give you sort of the coder's perspective on this problem. So, one evening at a coding event, when we were working on Tulsa Transit's data, we noticed a bug in some Python code, and so this is the actual code and the bug and all that kind of stuff. And when coders hit this, it's like supremely frustrating because you have sort of a difficult choice to make. You can either go around the bug that's in the code, or you can stop what you're doing now and fix it. And coders we hit this all the time, right? So there's like 4.5 million coders on this site called GitHub, which is probably the best measure of how many there are. 48% of them hit one of these each day, and 64% of them code around that bug. So there's about 1 million of us every day that spend this time discovering these bugs and then writing messy code and going around them and all that kind of stuff. And we lose progress on our work, and this happens every single day, right? So we wanted to create something that helps ourselves and in turn helps millions of other coders. So Cozy helps coders get their real work done by sort of amplifying incentives to get those bugs fixed, right? And what happens, this is sort of, whenever a coder sees a bug, they'll go online and there's usually an issue for this bug on the web. Somebody else has already hit it, they've reported it, and this is kind of the place where all the development is tracked and everyone puts a comment like, yes, I hit this last night, it happened, in this code or whatever, I was using it this way and that kind of thing. So all of these reports are kind of online about the bugs already. So what Cozy does is we stick an extra button onto this report, and it asks the coder 2 simple questions. How much would you be willing to pay for someone else to fix this bug? How much would you need for you to stop what you're doing right now and fix it yourself? So this is that moment where we have to decide if we go around a bug or if we stop what we're doing. We're basically capturing that and putting a dollar figure to each of those options. So I can say, hey, I don't have time to stop and do this now, but I would throw in $5 if somebody else on the web could fix this. Or, hey, like if I were to stop what I'm doing, I would need $500 to actually stop what I'm doing and work on this. So that's pretty much it. That's the interaction that the developer has with Codesy. Once they've done that, we have a matchmaking algorithm that adds up all of the bids and then finds the appropriate person who had an ask about. So if all the bids add up to somebody's $200, then we send them an email that says, hey, like, that bug that you said you would fix for $200 now has $200 on it. Go fix it and we will pay you. So the coder will go back to the bug and they submit what's called like a pull request. So they go back there, they submit the pull request, and once it's merged, then we give them this collect your earnings screen. And in this screen, they have the ability to take all, the 100% of the earnings, or they can put some of it back to like the open source sort of nonprofit foundation that created the software in the first place, and they can give some of it to Codesy. So they can kind of split their earnings 3 ways, right? And the default split is like an 80-10-10. So we notify all of the bidders that the bug has been fixed, and so they can go on and actually update their software with the new bug fix. So we ran a survey to see if this sort of idea would sort of resonate with other developers, and 80% said they would pay into a system like this. About 46% said they would pay more than $50 per year, and then if you multiply that times the 3 million coders, actually now 4.5 million, it would be much bigger. But the total market size potential is like $140 to $240 million a year. So that money is kind of going from coders to coders, but Codesy is sort of in the middle facilitating transactions and sort of taking the transaction fees. So a 5% transaction fee on that market is $7 million to $12 million per year in revenue for Codesy. There are some people that are already in this space. Bounty Source is a service that is trying to do this, but they don't quite fit the open source ecosystem. Freedom Sponsors is now defunct, and then Bounty open source software is now defunct as well. So Codesy has a couple of advantages over them. We're going to be open source. We're also going to implement a pay what you want and make what you want system. So it's really up to the coders to decide how much they want to pay, and how much they want to keep. The bid amounts are private, which is one of the key things. And then Codesy will basically solicit business contributions into the system. So I could go into detail, but I'm already stretching time. If you want me to, just ask me later about any of those individual advantages. So let's do...
That would be a good place for us to stop right now. And now is our chance as a community to engage and ask questions about how really we can help Codesy get better and get to the next level. So if you have a question, get my attention. I may be in the back, so turn around and make eye contact with me, and I'll keep a queue of who's next. So here we go.
Okay, I love it. First of all, because there's an entrepreneur here that's having a problem and I need to fix it on the Trivia for Friends. But so how do I start using this, or the bigger question is how are you going to make it spread? I want to participate now, so how does that happen?
So this is our website, codesy.io, and if you go there right now, there's a couple things that work and a couple things that don't work. There are links to surveys for developers and links to surveys for end users, so just filling out surveys is helpful, especially for coders. So those links are good. There's also a browser extension, so if you use Firefox or Chrome, you can actually install Codesy into your browser, and it will put the button, it will start putting that button on bugs automatically for coders. So we wanted to make it as simple as possible for a coder to start using Codesy, and that's the simplest thing to do. It's a one-button install process, and the reality is that most coders, we're all doing our coding on a desktop browser. We're using the desktop browser while we code, so That's basically the entry point, and then it basically adds to the interface that all coders are already using to track bugs. We just add another little cozy widget in there.
Kind of a two-part question. Is this only for open source coding or for private applications as well?
It's only for open source coding right now. That's sort of the next expansion phase. So we went through the I2E accelerator, and that was one of the things that they helped us tease out would be the play for enterprise software. The key to getting into enterprise software developers is to actually give them something for free on the stuff that they're using on their personal projects. And that's big, like, so they'll start using Cozy on all the open source stuff. And then once it sort of has a bunch of the coders inside an IT department are using Cozy, they're the ones that sell it to their managers. And that's really how, I mean, the days where you would go and like make a big sale of $1 million to a CIO, those days are kind of waning, right? So this is really, this sort of tactic here is actually the entry point to the closed source enterprise software type stuff.
And then second question, I'm not a developer, this guy is here, but I understand there's sloppy code and then clean code with more efficiency for it. How does somebody gauge the quality and whether or not the bug was fixed?
Whether the bug was fixed is actually an interesting mechanism that we will experiment with. All of this is based on a research paper by a former colleague of mine at the University of Michigan, basically using a sealed bid auction system to fix open source software. In his model, everyone who bids higher than the median amount on the bug becomes a panel to make the decision, the judge, as to whether or not this bid should be paid out. So everyone who bids higher than the median amount basically has a higher stake in the bug itself and the payment of it. So they, 4 or 5, however many people, basically vote as to whether or not it should be paid out.
They get a cut.
No,
But maybe they will.
maybe you'll get a cut.
Right here, right there.
My question is, what if, because I can see myself doing this where I'm in the middle of it, I find a bug and I'm like, I'll pay $200 to get this fixed. I don't want to deal with this anymore. But then what if how long does it take? I mean, like someone, the bids don't add up until 3 days down the road and I've already fixed it. Have I committed to that, or how do you?
Yeah, so this is one of the things we need to tease out, and it's one of the differences that we have is in the private bid amounts. So if you were to bid $200, nobody else knows that you bid $200 except for you. So what we would do is, if we can actually show you, and this is sort of the enterprise play, one of the enterprise plays, is we would offer for maybe $30, $40, $50 a month a subscription to enterprises so they could actually see what the asks are, right? So the asking amounts are all private unless you pay the subscription fee. If you pay the subscription fee, you can see like, I put $200 on this and there's a coder that asks $225. So if I just put another $25 on this, someone will start working on it right now, right? So that would be like a premium service. And there's more than just monetary reasons to operate that way. There's actually like the social ecosystem of open source software is such that you shouldn't publicize the bids anyway. And that's the problem Bounty Source has right now. But yeah, so that's definitely in our minds. I don't think we have a solution for it. We have an idea that we would have to test.
Okay. On your left here.
What does staffing look like for this company? I mean, I don't have a sense of what the actual roles are, how many people you need, if there's a large marketing force.
So we had 3 technical co-founders at the beginning. I would not suggest that in the future. Considering 3 technical co-founders, you will have at least 6 different technical approaches. So, but yeah, we were able to produce the code pretty easily. I think what we were lacking is sort of the design. We needed a better design sense. Probably a good marketing sense is what we need in the future. The problem with technical talent, which anyone kind of in a startup will understand in our area, is that to get a full-time developer onto any sort of startup, there's really there's high table stakes to just get them to the table, right? Because developers are typically making pretty good money at a nice company job wherever they are, wearing do-rags and crap like that. So, I mean, really, the staffing is, we need developers, but we also need the design stuff. Another advantage that we have is that since Cozy is open source, what that means is we actually get code contributions from people that aren't like inside Cozy, aren't employees or anything like that. So we actually have 3 contributors from Tulsa Web Devs that aren't, they're not even interested in getting a job or anything. They just saw the project, thought it was cool, and helped us build a bunch of it. So that's kind of the power of the open source ecosystem, if you will, is that, you know, the code that I work on in my day job, there's 5 of us employed full time, but there's 112 people that work on the code, right? So.
Can you kind of talk about how people maybe register as users? Is it in terms of really the thing about the payment piece? You know, are people required to put up a credit card, you know, maybe like a crowd sale where they want to go and they've already contributed money and unless it tells they don't actually get charged for the process, and they also say on the same side, how people collect their funds. You know, what's the process there? And that's the second question after this.
So we are integrating with a payment provider called Balanced, and they're credit card processing, but they're sort of, the nice thing that they have is they have a really slick API for coders to work with, so we can really quickly, you know, implement credit card processing where we don't have to do any of the credit card piece, right? Like we can just sort of kick users over to them, and they facilitate a credit card transaction. They put all of the amounts into our account at balance, right? The challenge there, like you said, is do we charge the person as soon as they're making the bid, in which case their funds are now committed into Cozy? One of the groups in there, one of the competitors in there, Freedom Sponsors, didn't do that. It was basically you pledge $5, and then when the bug is fixed, that's when they go ask you to pay, and their delinquency rate was something like 50%. I mean, it's already fixed. Why would I have to pay for it, right? So I mean, you can kind of build that into your model, or I think for us the smarter thing to do is to actually charge up front. But then you have, what we would do is you have $5 of Cozy credit, and at any time you can sort of shift that away to a different bug. Like if your priorities change, or if you fixed it yourself, things like that, right? That kind of thing. So we would take money up front, but we would give you that as credit in the Cozy system, right? And then you can move it to other bugs if you want to.
All right, my other question, not to hog the microphone, but I'm not a coder, but would there be a way for someone that said, hey, I'm going to take $200 to fix this code, to go ahead and fix the code in some other place and still like basically hold on to it, wait till it is accepted, you know, and they can move on and basically fix the codes as they want and wait for someone to actually pay them before they implement the fix?
Not in this way, not the way that it's currently implemented, because the way that we pay out is when your fix is actually merged into the code base, right? So the way that these projects happen is, for example, we have our code bases on our GitHub. If there's a bug in it, someone has to send a public pull request, and everyone can see that there's a fix now, that it like needs moderation fix, right? And the only time that we pay out is when that's actually put back into the original code. So, but somebody could fix the bug and then sit on the code themselves and never send that pull request, but somebody else there's a possibility that somebody else will come along and fix it for $100 instead, and then they get all the money. Be okay.
Hey Luke, you've accomplished a lot since your I2E presentation, and I'm wondering what are the roadblocks, or what do you need in order to get Cozy up and running, take the payments, fix the bugs? What are some of your roadblocks, and what do you need to get through them?
The biggest roadblock right now stems from, we went in like 3 different technical approaches because we have 3 technical founders at the beginning. So reconciling that all back into one is what I'm currently doing. That's what I was coding on like last night, the night before that. So reconciling that is really just a development challenge. So a developer to help me do that, and really just I need more time in the day, which I don't have. But after that, I think there's the marketing piece of it. So like all of our logos and stuff were made by me in PowerPoint. If there's any designers in the audience, they just threw up in their mouths a little bit. So yeah, like this you can tell this guy got some spacing issues and all this kind of crap. I am not a graphic designer or marketer by any stretch. So I kind of need that piece. Once it's out there, we'll need some marketing help as well, but the way to market to developers is pretty specialized. Like, I don't expect a lot of people to actually join Cozy unless you're a pretty serious coder, right? Which at least there's 4.5 million of them in the world, but they're kind of few and far between, right?
So are there any kind of weird or fun tax or bookkeeping issues for being this clearinghouse for these payments?
How long do you have?
Could you also explain what those things are?
Okay, so let's go to. So because Cozy is at the intersection of all of these coders who are offering and asking and sending tips back into Cozy, the most interesting thing that we can do is, let's say there's some bug that a developer needs $200 to fix. There's another bug that a developer needs $500 to fix. All of the asks on the 500 add up to 490, and all of the asks on the 200 add up to 250. So there's a surplus on this one, there's a deficit on this one. What we can do, because we know all of this, is we can intelligently, at the bidder's permission, reroute funds to get more bugs fixed, right? Not necessarily just the bugs that are fully funded, but bugs everywhere. Like, all software in the world starts to become better just because we can intelligently reroute coders' energy towards the bugs that, right? So that's one of the more sort of far-fetching, interesting things that we can do.
Then your left here.
So I picked up on some bits and pieces of this in different answers, but where are you at as a business in terms of your startup position? What's your current state of the business?
So we, through the ITB Accelerator, started an LLC, and we received 38,000 of the C-level funding that ITB gives you with their accelerator program. We spent like $300 of that on a single SSL cert because we use free software, we use free hosting, like everything we do is pretty much free. So we have a little bit of a war chest to use. The only thing I wish we could buy with that was time, right? More time to work on it. But yeah, so that's where we're at. We have an LLC, we have some funding, and we don't have any like current full-time employees. It's still really just two of us now doing this in our spare time. But I think, yeah, so that's sort of the state. Is that what you're
So
asking
you're
about?
reconciling all these different versions together. What does that look like?
So the sad thing is that, kind of like with all accelerators and stuff, for demo day we sort of did all this crunching, and on the weekend we ate too much pizza and drank too much beer and wrote code we shouldn't have written. So we're kind of paying that down right now. So the idea is that whenever we reconcile this, it'll basically do what it does right now, but it'll be a lot less hacky.
So it's doing something now. There's a version that's live.
Yes, there's a buggy version that's live.
Okay.
It worked on demo day where we could where we had staged everything up and so if you do it just this way, but don't click that button, that kind of thing.
About offering money for people.
Okay, right.
Right here.
Okay, so I'm an open source developer, and is this available only for GitHub, or is this available for any public repos?
That was one of the cool stories that we got. So because this was open source, there was a guy in Tulsa Web Devs who we created it to only work on GitHub, and then out of the blue he just sort of sent us a pull request that made it work on Bitbucket, SourceForge, Google Code Hosting, GitHub, like a ton more sites, right? So we opened our audience from one site with 4.5 million users to probably 5 sites with like an 8 million users or whatever. So that was pretty cool. It's just one open source contributor.
Have you looked into incorporating aspects of gamification, like having a top 10 hit list of bugs or contributors or something like that?
So it gets back to that the bid amounts. If we did that, we would have to do it in such a way that we don't mention the bid amounts. So the approach here is inspired by a research paper at Duke University, where they actually found that if you go into a social market, like open source software is, and start putting monetary values and quantities and stuff like that, you really change the dynamics of that market and that ecosystem, right? So same sort of deal here, like if we were to start to charge 50 cents for every question you're gonna ask me, it just makes it stupid, right? Like, so there's a research paper that's about social and monetary markets and why you do or don't do things like that. So the monetary values are definitely something you keep hidden because you will change the way that the open source world is working right now. Having said that, as far as gamification goes, you can do things like number of bugs fixed per week or something. So you can have a top coder, you just make sure you're not including any of the monetary values in that gamification.
Okay, and then the last question, the one that we ask every presenter is, how can we, the community, help you, Cozy, get to the next level?
If you can create maybe 26 hours in a day instead of 24, I don't know if anyone has that power. Outside of that, we could use a little bit of design help and probably some marketing help.
Awesome. Let's give it up for Cozy for Luke. All right. I'm here for announcements. All right, let's get caught up here. Okay, so if you haven't already, be sure and sign up for the Tulsa 1 Million Cups newsletter. Mr. Barron sends that out every Monday and talks about the companies that are going to be presenting, plus just good information about what's going on in the entrepreneurship community here in town. Tomorrow, my final presentations. I know there's a lot of people really excited about that. I saw a tweet this morning, there's only 20 spots left, so get your tickets if you want to go to that. It's tomorrow from 4 to 6 at the Schusterman Center at OU Tulsa. Just remember, the Thrive 15, who presented a couple weeks ago, is doing a free trial. You can use the promo code 1MILCUPS. Spring Beta early stage pitch contest. You need to submit your video by the 22nd, which is tomorrow. So get on that if you want to do that. If you want to get more connected to the Oklahoma City tech community, Tailwind, which is a great company based out of Oklahoma City, is having a demo day at their office June 4th at noon. Really cool company, and they've done a lot to support the ecosystem there. Another really exciting thing, if you haven't heard of it yet, Cultivate 918 is a cool initiative supporting entrepreneurship in Tulsa, so be sure to check them out, their website, cultivate918.com, as well as their Twitter account. They're going to have monthly meetings just talking about entrepreneurship, what we can do. We've got tons and tons of resources in Tulsa, so it's really exciting to see them bring everything together so that we can really support entrepreneurs. Be sure and use the hashtag TimInZim. So Tim Bickers, one of our organizers, is in Zimbabwe for the next 3 weeks. He's really involved with the entrepreneurship community there. So give him a shout out. He actually just tweeted at us like 20 minutes ago that he just landed, and he left like 2 days ago. So that's rough. All right, so our next presenter is the Oklahoma Innovation Institute. George is going to be talking about that. Really cool organizations supporting research, entrepreneurship, technology, really exciting things going on. So give it up for George and OII.
Thanks. So my name is George Falcon. I'm with the Oklahoma Innovation Institute, specifically a department called the Tandy Supercomputing Center. One thing Luke said really spoke to me. We had this little graphic that we used for a while that I made in PowerPoint, and then we paid somebody to make that instead, and it looks so much better. So I'm actually morally obligated to include it in every single presentation I give. But it kind of gives the idea behind what we're doing at OII. We've existed for about a year and a half now as a nonprofit that actually employs people. It was really exciting. I was actually employee number one. But the idea behind what we do is we want to be able to translate research and support for research and support for commercializing research into high-impact job opportunities for Oklahomans. So the whole idea is what can we do to get researchers talking to each other, to get researchers talking to people in industry, and to provide resources to support researchers and get them rolling into making businesses. So here's another one of those pictures. It's too tiny to see, so don't worry about it. It's just what I'm going to have up there when I talk about what we do. I direct the Tandy Supercomputing Center, which is the first major initiative of OII. We provide a community supercomputing resource. So we have a cluster high-performance computing tool in City Hall that's available for users from TCC, TU, and the Tulsa campuses of OU and OSU. The presidents of those institutions are also on our board. And then we also have some capability to provide resources for free to entrepreneurs and at cost to private entities that can actually afford it. And that was made possible through a donation from the A.R. and Mary Louise Tandy Foundation, hence the name. And yeah, it is the same family as from the Radio Shack and Tandy Computer Corporation, or at least a branch of that family. And a grant that we got from the Economic Development Administration. So, what do I mean when I say a supercomputer, right? Because that's kind of the first question that we get after the Tandy one. So, a supercomputer is one of the biggest, fastest computers in the world right this minute. And right this minute is like the most important part of that because of the inexorable progress of technology and the breakneck speed at which things become obsolete. But the general rule of thumb is it's something that provides about 100 times as much computing in terms of operations per second as something that you're likely to be able to buy and put on your desktop right this moment. I also, in the community, use terms like high-performance computing, high-end computing. That's kind of gone out of style. Cyber infrastructure is coming into style, particularly if you're trying to get funding from the National Science Foundation. So supercomputing is something that you do when you have a problem that is either too big or too slow on a desktop or a laptop. So if you're studying, say, star formation, that's way too huge to store all of the variables and all of the things that you need to keep track of in that model in the RAM, say, on your desktop. Or if you're doing weather forecasting, sure, you could probably forecast a storm that's coming this week on your desktop, and then you'll find out what it's going to do tomorrow, a week from now, and that'll be completely worthless. So a big use of supercomputing is if we need an answer very, very soon, we can use a much, much bigger kind of resource. In industry, we'll see supercomputing used in doing things like 3D seismic surveying in the oil and gas industry. A big driver of cost savings using computational science and using computational engineering and using computer models instead of doing things in the real world is in product testing, particularly destructive product testing. So you don't want to build a prototype car and crash it literally every time that you want to answer some kind of question that you have about how it will perform in a crash. So computer models can be employed in order to answer some of those questions without having to spend the money to build and destroy a car. It's vastly reduced the time to market, for instance, for car tires, because instead of having to build a model and put it in a wind tunnel and spray it with water and see how it works, now Goodyear, for instance, can make a computer model and say, is this tire actually going to work before we mold the rubber or injection or whatever, however they do it. And then, I don't know if you heard about this a couple of years ago, it turned out that Target could tell when people were pregnant. And so they would mail them, congratulations, you're having a baby coupons in the mail, and they could tell just by what they were buying leading up to the pregnancy. It was crazy. And that's kind of that big data problem, right, where doing data mining, a huge amount of customer records lets them figure out what's going on with people, and that's a big use of a big computer. So how can you get involved? We have community grants of access that are available for free to members of the community. We're really excited about potentially partnering with other nonprofits if you have computational needs, if you have big research questions that you're interested in asking, big amounts of data or whatever to crunch through. We'd love to help somebody who's also serving the community. And then we're also available to startups for free, at least at first. So if you have any kind of challenges that you think maybe a big computing resource could help with, let us know and we can at least talk to you. And then we have dedicated resources available for those who can afford it at about that cost.
Okay, terrific. Well, let's now engage and ask questions about the Tandy supercomputer. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. Catch my attention.
So we need to chat after this.
All right.
I work for my Health Access Network.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Big data in healthcare, and one of the greatest concerns we've had to date is HIPAA compliance, although it's not an industry standard.
Yeah, that's the concern, isn't it? Yeah.
Thoughts?
Well,
because
yeah. So at least with you guys' research mission, that's something you're going to have to deal with no matter what, right? At the moment, we're just not set up to be able to handle HIPAA data, so we can't do any hosting for you, or at least we won't sign a BAA. I'll say that. That would be something that would be really awesome if we could get to at some point, and it's sort of on our long-term radar, particularly because you guys exist. We definitely want to find some ways to work with you, but HIPAA's not something we can really handle right now.
So as you look over the past year and a half, what are some of your biggest wins, and what have been some of the larger challenges to overcome for use of the supercomputer?
So one of the things that was really surprising to me was the number of people who were actually already really bought in the research community, who had used them, as graduate students or were using one at OU or whatever. And so we would come into a lab and expect to be hand-holding somebody and say, here's how you type into a cookie, here's how you connect, here's how you use a supercomputer. And then they're just talking way over our heads about some crazy science, molecular dynamics thing. And they just want an account and to get started. So that was really exciting, seeing that our assumptions about the demand were, if anything, lower than reality. Some of the challenges have been completely administrative. So we have a really unique model where we serve multiple institutions, where we're dealing with people from lots of different disciplines, lots of different employers, lots of different competing sets of concerns, and just establishing the interpersonal infrastructure for managing all of that. Who do we talk to when we need to figure out the answer to this question has been really, really challenging. Luckily, everyone's really bought in, and everyone's really excited, and so there's no big egos in the way, but it's just a big issue of figuring out who to talk to about what.
George, can you talk a little bit about what else OII does beyond just the Tandy supercomputer, or what its kind of goals to do are?
Yeah, so our goals are kind of entirely oriented around this idea that if we provide resources to the community that are focused around collaboration with an eye toward research and the pipeline of research to jobs, that we can make a positive impact in the community. So the Supercomputing Center is our first major project. It's under the auspices of a coalition we call Tulsa Research Partners, which is made up of TU, TCC, and the Tulsa campuses of OU and OSU. We also put on an annual or biennial, whichever one is every other year, biennial, I think, research day that's open to pretty much anybody. That's going to be, I think, October 4th, right across the street this year, November 4th. I don't know. It'll be on our website. And then we're also sort of coordinating the creation of the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. This is a group of stakeholders in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, education and workforce development community in Tulsa. So what we're really trying to do is bring everybody who's concerned about that, who's working on that together, get them talking, ask the question, what resources can we provide you, how can we help? And we're proceeding on that with a lot of help from the Schusterman Family Foundation. We've already had some pretty cool wins there. Tulsa was recognized as a finalist community in the US 2020 City Competition, which was a competitive grant process for building communities of mentors for particularly underrepresented students in STEM. And we were one of 13 finalists out of 53 cities that applied. We didn't wind up winning the grant, but we're still very involved in that community, and we've been invited to go to Washington and work with the other finalists in the winning communities. Yeah, and that's kind of what we do right now. Those are the two main focuses that we have, but we're broadly interested in anything that can, through collaboration and sharing resources and identifying things that don't exist that could help translate research to jobs.
This is a technical question, or I don't know if it's a technical question, but what's the advantage of this as a coder for me to use this supercomputer versus like just spinning up a bunch of Amazon EC2 instances?
So in general, the kind of work that you do, probably no advantage. The kind of stuff that you do, that I'm guessing you do every day, EC2 is going to be way more appropriate for you. The kinds of paradigms that work well on supercomputers like this are very, very highly parallel and highly tightly coupled kinds of processing. So say you need 120 cores with very, very fast communication between them. I think EC2 is starting to have some much more tightly coupled services. They're vastly more expensive than the normal instances are. But we serve a pretty different kind of niche compared to the cloud providers. So an example, which one of these is shown up here? So doing this is probably using a finite element model, and this might have been done on a dozen different machines, and because each element of that simulation depends on what happens in neighboring elements, then there needs to be a tight amount of coupling between the two systems. And the other reason for the existence of a system like ours, particularly to serve research users, is they just don't have the kind of technical capability to spin up cloud instances for computing tasks like this. And we really have to have an automated way to balance the competing demands of multiple users who want to use this many cores versus this many cores for this project for how long, who has priority now, and so on.
So to that point where you just are leaving off, how does one engage with you to get time on the system, and how does that work? Am I buying an amount of time on the system, sections of the system? I'm not using the right words, but...
Yeah, so I have a slide about that, sort of. So it used to be the case, this is a Cray 1, that's like the quintessential supercomputer, right? We don't make anything like that anymore. Supercomputers today are almost exclusively clusters, so they're groups of just normal computers that typically are networked together with a specialized network, and they run a piece of software called a resource manager or a scheduler, and that runs on every single computer in the system. The individual computers are called nodes, and that network that connects them together is called the interconnect, because we have to have the special jargon for this for some reason. So when we sell access to the supercomputer, it's basically a dedicated share of the system at the node level. So the result is that we're a nonprofit, so I don't want to say customer, but the customer pays an amount of money that's equal about to the purchase price of a server that makes up a node in the system. then in return for that, they get dedicated access to at least an equivalent amount of resources in the computer that their money paid for. And the win there is that you can get, you can grow and shrink in the usage, but also that all of this common infrastructure is paid for. That was from the Economic Development Administration and the grant from the Aaron Mary Louise Tandy Foundation. So there's actually quite a lot of cost savings for buying into this infrastructure. So as a startup, if you think you have something that might be a good fit, send me an email, we'll talk, we'll figure out if it's a fit or not. If not, if you need to use EC2, I'll tell you you need to use EC2. But if there's really a play there, then we can get some stuff running and see if it works out. And even for larger potential users, we're happy to do proofs of concept or whatever.
So say I work at a university, what type of researchers should I be pointing in your direction? And then second part to that is what value do you offer over current university capabilities? And then is there any IP elements?
Ooh, that's a good one. The first one was what kinds of researchers to point in this direction. So the ones who already know all about computational science and engineering are the ones in engineering schools. Mechanical engineers and physicists, well, some physicists, chemical engineers, computer scientists, I'm probably missing some, but those guys know, meteorologists, they know all about using computers to solve their problems faster, how a bigger, higher performance system can help them do bigger, more exciting science, right? What we're really interested in, and we want to grow the usage of those types of users right now as well. But the really cool stuff is when, in my opinion, when you can get life scientists and even social scientists, folks from even non-science disciplines to think about how does data play into what I do, and how can getting a better handle on that data and how I can think about it and ask questions about it come up with wins for me. And so if there's anybody even vaguely interested in a social science, for instance, we'd love to start having some wins on that side. The second one was, how is what we do adding more value than what already exists at the universities?
Yeah, and that's kind of connected to the IP.
Right. So there wasn't really a high-performance computing resource to speak of in Tulsa, at least available to academics, until we stood up the system last year. At the time there were two, there's now 3 other academic supercomputers in the state. One at OU, which is the biggest, one at OSU at Stillwater, and now one at Langston, in Langston. And we have a very good relationship with those folks. And anybody at any of our, any academic or not-for-profit user at any of our institutions can use any of those systems in the state. And we have intentionally given them at least somewhat different capabilities, so we know that there's some things that we need to send somebody to OU for. If they've got somebody who needs a lot of RAM, for instance, they send them to us, but that's kind of a technical issue. The main win is having somebody whose job it is to sit down and talk to researchers and users and scientists and potential supercomputing users about their work, because most of them don't know where to start, but they totally understand their work, and they totally understand the value that getting their work done on a big computer faster can bring to them. They just don't typically know where to get started. So one guy can sit down for an hour or 2 hours with a lab full of scientists and bring them way farther into the future than they could with 3 months of reading stuff online. And so the real win and the real value is having people in Tulsa to serve those users whose job it is to just help them. Oh, there was an IP question. Well, I'm sorry, what was the IP question? Just generally? No, we don't get any. And we have basically agreements with our users that protect their respective intellectual property.
When you wake up in the morning and you're hoping for this customer that you have in mind, who is it that you haven't? You've talked about universities and maybe an oil and gas company or an astronomy person or something. When you wake up in the morning, who hasn't come in the door yet that you are hoping will come through the door to use what you do?
I want somebody to walk through the door who says, I think I can solve education problems in Oklahoma. All I need to do is process some data. I'd be a little skeptical, but that's what we're here for. I'm really excited about the possibility that someday somebody's going to walk through the door who says, here's this problem that our community has, and I think we can work on this problem together using computing. I think we can ask questions of this data that I'm bringing to you that will really make a positive impact on this community. That's who I want to walk through the door.
Just out of curiosity, what are the specs of the nodes and how many nodes do you have? Give us such a scale.
Yeah, so we have 100 compute nodes right now. That's about a third of the capacity that we have, so we can pretty quickly add new equipment. So we have 100 right now. They're 16 core apiece, 128 gigs of RAM. Just plain old Intel Xeons, Sandy Ridge. They run, as of yesterday, they run Cent. The day before yesterday, they ran Red Hat Enterprise Linux. But that's expensive.
Could you talk a little bit about your background and your personal story? What makes you qualified to talk about this Tandy supercomputer and work on it?
I'm not.
I believe that you are. It's not skeptical.
So one of the interesting things that I'm learning about this supercomputing community, talking to people who run supercomputers for different companies, for universities, is that all of them come in from a completely different background, and none of them ever expected to be doing what they're doing. And that's definitely the case for me. The guy who runs the supercomputer at OU said, and this fits me too, you know that thing that little kids do on playgrounds where one guy like kneels behind somebody and the other guy pushes him over it? That's kind of how I got the job. And that sort of, speaks to me as well. So I have a master's degree from the University of Tulsa. I worked in the Institute for Information Security. I've done some contract software development as well, and I got involved with this mainly through my connections at TU as a volunteer in 2011. And then one thing just led to another. We were working on fundraising and building the thing, and then one day it was real. And I turned into employee number one at OII, and so that was pretty cool. But yeah, that's kind of me.
Okay, and then lastly, what can we, the community, do to help Tandy Supercomputer and OII get to the next level?
Man, he asked the question that I was saving the answer for that to be what I'm really excited about the potential for working with other members of the community who are working for the good of the city and community. And so if there's any opportunities that you can think of with other nonprofits or just in any way to serve the community, that's something that we're really excited to be able to do. We also have a couple open positions. We're looking for somebody who can talk to scientists and to folks in industry, primarily to scientists. So we have an open position for somebody whose job it is to really understand what the research landscape in Tulsa is and really just try to create opportunities for scientists to talk to each other, to talk to people from industry who might be interested in what they're working on, and to match those with funding opportunities. And that's a position we have funded that we just have not found the right person for. So if you know anybody who's, I don't know, maybe like a program officer at the National Science Foundation looking to move to Tulsa, have them give me a call.
Okay, well, let's give a hand for George and OII. Well, we want to thank you again for coming this morning. We're here every Wednesday, and we encourage you, if something that one of the two presenters or both of them said spoke to you particularly, we encourage you to connect with them afterward, to connect with them online. Their Twitter handles are right here. If they're on Facebook, search for them on Facebook. We really want the community to rally around the startups that are here and support them and support each other in the process. Next week we have a special edition of 1 Million Cups that if you're on the newsletter, you'll find out about more specifically on Monday. I'll put that up again if I can find it. We generally feature companies that are, there it is, newsletter, send us an email. We generally feature companies that are startups and that are under well, that's the startup, right? That are under 3 years old and are scalable. But as organizers, we think that while that's important, there are also a lot of things going on in the Tulsa community that are innovative and that are important to our community that may not be scalable. So we're going to start next week featuring once a month for the coming few months. We'll see how long it lasts. Featuring organizations, companies in Tulsa that don't fit those criteria exactly, but that are still important for us to know about and important for us to help make grow, but are still relatively young. So you'll find out more about that in the email on Monday, but we hope we see you next week at 9 o'clock here at Foolish Things. Thanks for coming.